Most unhealthy relationships do not begin that way. They usually start with warmth, attention, and promise. There is chemistry, shared laughter, and a sense of being chosen. When people later ask, "Why didn't you leave?" they often imagine a moment when everything suddenly turned bad. In reality, it almost never works like that. The shift is gradual, quiet, and confusing. By the time the relationship feels unhealthy, it also feels familiar, invested, and difficult to imagine life without. One of the strongest forces keeping people in unhealthy relationships is emotional attachment layered with hope. Humans are wired to believe that effort will be rewarded. When someone remembers how things used to be, the early closeness, the version of their partner that felt kind or attentive, it creates a powerful narrative. If I try harder, if I'm more patient, if I say the right thing, we can get back there. Hope becomes a tether. Letting go does not feel like freedom. It feels like giving up on something that still might be saved. Fear also plays a central role, though it often hides behind rational explanations. Fear of being alone can feel heavier than the pain of staying. Loneliness is an abstract threat, while an unhealthy relationship is a known quantity. Many people unconsciously choose the familiar discomfort over the unknown. They know how to survive what they are already in. They do not know who they will be without it. There is also the quiet erosion of self-worth that happens inside unhealthy dynamics. When criticism, dismissal, or emotional unpredictability become routine, people begin to doubt their own perceptions. They ask themselves whether they are being too sensitive, too demanding, too dramatic. Over time, this self-doubt can become so ingrained that leaving feels unjustified. If the problem is me, then the solution must be me as well. This belief traps people in cycles of self-correction rather than self-protection. Unhealthy relationships often create a distorted sense of responsibility. People feel accountable for their partner's emotions, reactions, and well-being. If the other person is unhappy, withdrawn, angry, or volatile, it can feel like a personal failure. This sense of responsibility can deepen into guilt. Leaving starts to feel like abandonment rather than self-care, especially when a partner expresses dependence, vulnerability, or past trauma. Compassion becomes a cage. Another reason people stay is that unhealthy relationships rarely feel unhealthy all the time. There are good days, moments of tenderness, apologies that sound sincere. These moments are not imagined, they are real, but they are intermittent. This unpredictability strengthens attachment rather than weakening it. The nervous system learns to chase relief, affection, or calm, much like a reward that arrives just often enough to keep hope alive. The relationship becomes emotionally addictive, even when it is damaging. Social and cultural pressures also shape decisions more than we like to admit. People fear judgment for leaving, especially if the relationship looks functional from the outside. Friends may only see the polite conversations, the shared photos, and the occasional laugh. Family members may encourage endurance rather than exit. There is still a widespread belief that commitment means staying, that love is proven through tolerance, and that leaving is a failure rather than a boundary. These messages make it harder to trust one's internal alarm bells. Practical considerations can further complicate the picture. Shared finances, living arrangements, children, or social networks can make leaving feel overwhelming. The logistical weight of disentangling a life can feel heavier than the emotional cost of staying, at least in the short term. People often postpone leaving not because they don't recognize the harm, but because they cannot yet see a viable path forward. There is also identity to consider. Relationships shape how people see themselves. Someone may be the fixer, the supporter, the loyal one who never gives up. Leaving an unhealthy relationship can feel like losing not just a partner, but a role that once gave meaning. Without that role, there is uncertainty. Who am I if I stop trying to save this? Perhaps the most misunderstood reason people stay is love itself. Love does not disappear simply because a relationship becomes unhealthy. People can deeply love someone who hurts them, neglects them, or cannot meet them emotionally. This does not mean they are weak or naive. It means they are human. Love can coexist with pain, and recognizing that truth helps remove shame from the decision to stay longer than outsiders think is reasonable. Understanding why people remain in unhealthy relationships is not about excusing harm. It is about recognizing complexity. Leaving is not a single brave moment. It is often the result of many quiet shifts in awareness, strength, and self-trust. For some, the turning point comes when the cost of staying finally outweighs the fear of leaving. For others, it begins when they start listening to their own discomfort without immediately dismissing it. If you recognize yourself in this, it does not mean you have failed. It means you have been navigating something emotionally demanding with the tools you had at the time. Awareness is not weakness, it is the beginning of choice. And choice, when it is grounded in self-respect rather than fear, opens the door to relationships that feel safer, steadier, and more nourishing than endurance ever could. Leaving an unhealthy relationship is not a rejection of love. It is often the first act of loving yourself enough to stop shrinking your needs to fit someone else's limits.